he didn't need it.
Welcome to the college of complexes. This is our 483rd meeting since we started in February 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue and express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. I'm too loud, huh?
Turn it up.
Turn it up, turn it down. It's too loud. Anyway, how's that?
That's good, fine.
Okay.
That's good.
I got my technician here. He's telling me it's too loud. Anyway, we put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give our speaker up to an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we invite the interrupter. We listen only one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. Then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches. We have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium to respond to the speaker said for or against. The speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, to close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speaker, we have time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Now's the time to do it. Any announcements? Come on up here, make it. I know one guy's got an announcement here. He's come on up here.
Well,
we know we're going to make an announcement.
All right, Dallas Philosophers Forum is having another meeting. I think it's the 24th or the 26th. It'll be the fourth Tuesday. Let's see, the 12th plus 14th, 26th. And I believe the talk is going to be by David Alkick, and it's about the philosophy of science fiction. So if you want to get into the philosophy of science fiction, which I think there is some philosophy in it, it might be an interesting talk to come to. And we meet at a Boca's restaurant off of Beltline and Central. Beverly's been there. Gina's been there.
What's the name again?
I've been there.
Boca's.
It's a good place.
Italian restaurant. Good Italian food.
Yeah, it's a good place.
And this is on the
26th.
Right. Okay.
Except the traffic. Traffic is horrible.
Any other announcements?
Yes, I have an
Well,
announcement.
come on up here and do it.
They have already been announced, but Mary Fay,
Come on up here. Come on up here.
our very own Mary Fay Marks is featured in this supplement.
At the mic.
I think they can hear me. Our very own Mary Fay Marks is featured in this supplement, the Texas Catholic, for her service during World War II.
It's wonderful.
Korean War. This is Korean War. It was the Korean War. Correct. And they have an excellent picture of her. Mary Fay. Talk about that.
Bravo. Wow, that's terrific. Well, any more announcements? That's it for now? Okay. I've got November 23rd, that's next week. Kenneth Williams, he's sitting back there. He'll be our speaker. He's going to talk about the party of not, how two wings of the Democratic Party must fly or sink together. I won't read all this. It's on your itinerary. And the following week, we have December 7th, addressing a U.S. Constitution that doesn't work for everyone. That's Lorraine Keed. She's sitting right there. She'll be our speaker. So, anyway, and December 14th is the next open date we have for a speaker. It'll be the last day of the year for a speaker. So I was trying to get Paul Benson, but he's tied up until next year. So he was good at that. Anyway, but that's it. Anyway, our speaker tonight is it's Katherine McGovern. She's sitting right here. She's going to talk about how an impeachment process, not an election, is the only way to comply with the Constitution. I don't have my light up here. Anyway, she's a retired assistant United States attorney in Dallas. to the 2012 Democratic Nominee to the U.S. Congress with practices in the McGovern Law Office since April 2011, and a 2016 delegate to the Democratic National Convention. She's going to discuss how, in accordance with the Constitution, Articles 1 and 2, it's the light, I don't have a light, anyway, upon enabled, no, I can
Stop picking on them. Stop picking on them. Men don't need glasses, leave them alone.
open, credible facts with the president has violated the Constitution by commission of treason, bribery, high crimes, or misdemeanors. The Constitution places the duty of the House of Representatives to open an inquiry to determine what and whether articles of impeachment should be adopted by majority. What's the matter? Oh, I have a light. I thought it wasn't, I know it was hooked up. Amazing. I can see now. All right. Places the duty of the House of Representatives open inquiry to determine what and whether articles of impeachment should be adopted by a majority vote of the members of the House. She argues there is no constitutional authority to fail to proceed pursuant to Article 1 and 2.
Tom, why don't you let me just make the speech?
Yeah, I will. And let the electorate determine the question. Catherine also points out this is obvious because election is simply a popularity contest. She argues that the Constitution requires the determination of guilt or innocence of the charges in the articles of impeachment by the Senate. Catherine concludes that the concepts of impeachment and election are mutually exclusive. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Katherine McGovern.
I want to tell you that I did bring you homework, and if you do not have this on your table, let me know because I have extras.
Thank you.
There's nothing free in life, and so speakers aren't free if they give you work, right? Excuse me, sorry, Tom.
Now you have light.
Like many people of my age group, I'll be there in a minute. I have had cataract surgery, and so now I have bionic lenses, but that doesn't mean that I can actually see everything. So I have moved from the realm of expensive bifocals to these little peeper things that you can buy at any place.
Dollar store. Yeah.
Dollar Tree.
Just whatever suits you. I'm not gonna give a commercial about where to buy, but we all know what they are. So, to start out my comments, the first thing I'm going to show you is that I actually have a copy of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence with me. And for anyone who challenges me, I have a handout that I can circulate. I'm not going to give it away, but you know, I have all these different sites to the Constitution and the United States Code concerning what might be a high crime or misdemeanor. But let's go back to the beginning because we want to talk about this chart I spent a good amount of time making. So we're gonna start out there. And that is this very simple construction of how the Constitution provides for elections and for removal. Now they are not the same thing. The election is covered in Article 2, Section 1, clauses 1 to 3, and it tells you about how presidents are elected. I'm not going to get into the additional people, but it's pretty much the same thing, except that in the case of presidents, there is a specific provision, which I have provided to you, which says that you have to have a vote in the state. Each state gets to determine how the votes are going to be carried out. That's why we have these issues about gerrymandering and how votes are counted. all of the issues that we know and love. But no matter how many votes you get if you're running for president, if you do not win the electoral college, you don't get elected to be president. That's what happened in 2016. Hillary got almost 3 million more votes nationwide than Trump. But Trump was able to be elected by the College of Electors because he was able to get 70,000 more votes in 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, which resulted in his being elected, although he did not have a majority of the popular vote. That is, the election is a way the Constitution has set up, and our founding fathers set up, for us to select the people who would be the president, the vice president, and also members of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. They serve a term of years. You all know this because you, just like me, you're old enough to have taken, I don't mean to insult anyone that may not be old enough to have taken civics, but if you are, then you know that these things. Now, the founding fathers set up separate provisions for removal of a president and also certain other officers, but the only ones that I'm going to talk about is the president. For your information, the Senate has the removal authority with respect to the judiciary. And you know, you can read your Constitution and see who has, where different things lie, but the founding fathers, when they were writing the Constitution and the provisions, were well aware of the fact that you may have somebody in charge, a president, a king, whomever, governor, who, after he was elected, might not fulfill his obligation. Everyone who takes a federal job has an oath of office. Now, the oath of office is very specific. It says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, that's very straightforward. That's what the job of the president is. Now, where the president does not fulfill his oath, you have the bases from which he can be removed. That's treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, it's the use of the phraseology or others after treason and bribery tell you that, and I think that most authorities that have written on the founding fathers' use of terms recognize that they were not talking about small things or things that were de minimis in terms of not fulfilling the office. They're talking about actions which impact the national security, the use of presidential powers, the protection of the country above personal interest. That's what this is about. That is what the founding fathers were thinking about, and the reason they have the words they have. But because of the distance between 274 years and now, you have a lot of different people that have come along, and sometimes they want to say that a particular act may not amount to treason. We hear that in the current inquiry from our friends on the Republican side. But what we have to do is look at how the process works, because that's the balance of which makes our democracy what it is. The House has the sole power to impeach. They have under the Constitution the right to set their rules. So they do that. And in this particular case, they have set up rules for how the investigation would be done and how the public hearings would be done. There is some confusion or question, it seems, between what was done in Nixon's year, when Nixon was impeached, and what was done when Clinton was impeached. One very serious difference is that there were special counsel or independent counsel that actually investigated the allegations of a violation of the crimes of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In the case of both Nixon and Clinton, the focus was on or other high crimes and misdemeanors and what had occurred. We'll get to that later on. Once the House has gone through and had its investigation, it then will do what we are seeing now, public hearings to take witness testimony so that everyone that wants to can listen to what the witnesses have to say about issues that are under consideration by the House for possibly becoming an article of impeachment. Right now, because this came up primarily with what happened in Ukraine and the whistleblower, the authority for conducting the inquiry is with the Intelligence Committee of the House. That's who is in charge, but every one of the silent or not public depositions of witnesses has been attended by both the House, the Republican and the Democratic members who belong to those committees. So that is consistent with what the Constitution founding fathers had in mind. That is that you don't go railroad anyone, just because you may not like them. Andrew Johnson, who was the first president that they attempted to impeach, was dealing with allegations about not liking his policies or not liking his personality or having a difference of opinion. That is not what an impeachment is supposed to be about. And so that's why when we got to Nixon and Clinton, and now with respect to Trump, we are looking at what are the actions that would rise to either treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. The definitions that the House and the Senate may consider are not limited to what might be spelled out in the United States Code as a crime. That's not a prerequisite at all. But the next stage for the House is going to be after these hearings are over, and since as anyone who's been watching it this week realizes that some new facts and new witnesses became known, and so they may extend these public hearings and private and or closed depositions further in terms of the investigation. But the plan under the resolution that was passed in the House for how to proceed, it has that you will move to the Judiciary Committee with a recommendation from the Intelligence Committee and other committees as to potential articles of impeachment. Articles of impeachment are like an indictment. This falls into something that many people are aware of. In a trial, you have the specificity of what it is that the president is alleged to have done, which complies with a violation of the provisions in the Constitution that you can only be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Once that happens, then the Judiciary Committee will draw up or examine the evidence that's been sent over and likely draw up articles of impeachment. And then the whole House will vote, the committee will vote on it, and then the House will vote on it. And then those articles of impeachment will be sent to the Senate. Now, unlike a bill from the House that the Senate Majority Leader may not want to consider, in the case of impeachment, that's not his choice. The Senate has the sole power to try articles of impeachment. And when they are sitting as what I call the trier, they are under oath and affirmation that they will perform their duties as based upon the facts presented. The Constitution provides that in the case of the impeachment of a president, that the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court is the presiding officer. Now, the presiding officer is the judge, and the judge is the one that works with the parties. And parties in the case of an impeachment will be the attorneys representing the House to prosecute the articles of impeachment, and the whoever the president, who would be the subject of the impeachment articles or the indicted president would be defended by the attorneys of his choice. Now the senators do not have a role in the impeachment proceedings of asking questions or otherwise participating any more than the jurors at a trial do. Their job is to listen to the evidence that's presented and to come to a decision as to whether or not the evidence supports the articles of impeachment or not. That's their job. It's the job of the Chief Justice to set up the order of proceeding, to have control like a judge does over what's going on between the attorneys that are representing the president and the attorneys representing the House of Representatives. Excuse me. Now, does anyone see? Ah, there it is. Excuse me, Mr. Cameraman, but I had to get a drink. So we get to that framework. After the Senate has heard, the senators have heard all of the questions, the evidence that's presented, then they will vote by name, and it will be recorded as to whether they vote yes, he should be impeached, or no, he should not be impeached. That is how the Constitution provides this structure. It is not, although it will be hard if we look at the way the public hearings are occurring now, where the GOP representatives go off and on statements and questions and such like that. But in the impeachment trial, the senators' job and right is to listen, and the right of the parties, which would be Trump and the House of Representatives, is to speak, and the right of the presiding officer is to resolve issues of procedure. I litigated for many years, and ordinarily what the parties working with the judge that's presiding do is they come up with an agreed order of issues that must be decided. Well, the articles of impeachment do that, but you have the number of witnesses, the evidence that's actually presented, what is it that's going to be your exhibits, so that the parties know what it is that they are going to have to defend against, and also what is being prosecuted. That is a fundamental part of our due process under the Constitution. Now, one of the things that should be clear is this. The argument that why not, we're close to an election and why not just do that? But here's the thing. Being elected president does not guarantee immunity from the impeachment clause of the Constitution. And the duty of every elected member of Congress, whether you're in the House or the Senate, is to fulfill their oath, which is the one I just read to you. I will faithfully execute the office to which I've been elected and will try to the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So where you have a crime that is within the provisions that have been set out in the Constitution to justify removal of a president, you do not have, Senator Cornyn doesn't have the right, nor does Congressman Allred have the right to say, well, I don't want to do this. I've got to we've got to fulfill our constitutional duties. That's why ignoring the complaints against the president, which are supported by evidence, is not going to work. It's not up to the people to try him, it's up to the members of the House and the Senate, presided over by the U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Now, I have given you the sites that you probably need to take a look at, but one of the things that I felt was important for us to discuss today, because it's just come up, and that is the issue of bribery, which is one of the specifics under the Constitution for why a person, the president, could be removed. So you say, well, what is bribery? Well, the founding fathers, for whatever reason, felt everybody knew what bribery would be or is, and so it's not specifically defined. But you may have seen in the New York Times or in yesterday's news that Nancy Pelosi had had mentioned bribery specifically, and that goes back to what we've got, facts that seem undisputed. They are undisputed by the telephone memo of July 25th, 2019 between Trump and Zelensky. And you have them corroborated by the testimony of people with firsthand knowledge of what was said and what was being attempted in between the United States and Ukraine and the government. What the bribery would be, if named as an article of impeachment, is that the president, using his power as president, wanted to extort from Ukraine's president a promise of an investigation going back to 2016 and before into two things. One, Joe Biden and his son, and the allegations, which have never been supported and have been rebutted, of corruption. But he wanted, the president wanted Zelensky to open that up so that he could say in the 2020 election that Biden was under criminal investigation in Ukraine for corruption. He also wanted to have the findings of the intelligence, all of our intelligence community, that Russia interfered in the 2016 elections, changed so that he could have that it was Ukraine, not Russia. And that would provide him with two things that were of value to Trump. One, the sanctions that are on Putin and Russia are because of the, some of them anyway, are the most stringent, are because of the Russian interference in the 2016 election. If those were removed, then Putin and Russia and the oligarchs in Russia would be significantly financially enhanced. We cannot forget that Trump has a building enterprise that he wants to build in Moscow, this would also be possible because of the fact that you have the sanctions restricting the kind of investments that would be necessary into building that enterprise in Moscow, Trump Tower or something of that nature. So you have that, but you would also, as you remember, part of what Manafort was convicted on dealt with his involvement with Ukraine and Russia, and that black book showing how much he was being paid. And so if what occurred was, if Trump could have an investigation by Ukraine, which would end up saying that yes, it was Ukraine that had interfered with the United States elections, then you have the second thing happening. You have Trump's mind, a legitimate basis for pardoning Manafort, who is, as you know, in prison now. So that's where you get the benefit and the holding back of something that Ukraine needed, that is the military aid that had been congressionally approved. Since they are active fighting with Russia, if they don't have the aid, then they will not have the resources to fight Russia, which would allow Russia to be successful or to enter into an agreement or treaty with Ukraine that was highly favorable to them and gave them more power and insight, authority over Ukraine. Another part of what Putin is trying to do to rebuild the old Soviet empire. So with the additional facts that are pretty much undisputed, that is that Trump, for reasons that have not yet been fully disclosed, has a very subservient relationship to Putin. And so this might also be a factor in why they were trying to do that. So that is a fact issue which is still being developed, but seems to be one that has a lot of undisputed facts which support that it occurred, that Trump, through conspiracy with Giuliani, sorry. Yeah. But you have also the fact that the Attorney General of the United States, Barr, is involved. You have Rick Perry, who at the time was involved as Secretary of Energy, but he had an interest, according to what's been published, in certain the natural gas business, so that if the natural gas business were allowed to go forward, and then that would benefit him. At least that's what the news has reported. Whether or not the facts, when they are become known to us, and I don't know if they will, you have the elements for not only the bribery but also conspiracy. One of the things that has also created issues which are undisputed would be the question of the obstruction of Congress. Now, you have Congress under the Constitution, inherent in its legislative powers under the Constitution, has the right of oversight, because money that's appropriated to be spent by the executive branches are because of what the Congress approves or authorizes and appropriates. So when you have a situation, as we have observed for the last year anyway, because it went back into Mueller, where evidence that has been obtained is not produced in spite of a congressional request. A simple example could be the request of the House Oversight Committee to the Department of the Internal Revenue Service, Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service at the Department of Treasury, to have the tax returns of the president turned over to them. They were, this was something that they were investigating, and they had a statutorily clear right to it. The language was shall. But Trump refused to allow the Treasury to turn it over, and Mnuchin, as the Secretary of Treasury, prevented the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service from complying with the request of Congress. So that's one example. You have also the obstruction of justice, in that because of Trump's orders to executives in the all of the departments, like state, defense, for all I know, agriculture, commerce, but anyway, all of the places where the Congress has been trying to get witness testimony or documents, which are referred to in the Mueller report, they are not turning them over. So that prevents Congress has the authority under the Constitution, when it's doing an impeachment inquiry, to submit subpoenas. It also has, the different committees also have the right to submit subpoenas to obtain witness testimony or documentary evidence from an executive department of the United States that is being blocked. You have the question of witness intimidation. Now that played out yesterday when the ambassador ex-ambassador for Ukraine, Yanukovych, excuse me if I didn't get all those syllables there, but anyway, was testifying. As she started testifying, Trump was tweeting against her testimony, although she had barely said her name. And so Adam Schiff, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, stopped and asked her about that. How did she feel? And he read what the president tweeted, and she said that she felt it very intimidating. And she was asked, how do you think that would impact other federal foreign service officers? He said, well, I can't speak for all of them, but I believe that it would be very intimidating. It is the President of the United States that is making these assertions against her in this case. So you have that, but you also have other times when there has been efforts to intimidate the witnesses in the federal government who have received subpoenas to come and testify in the impeachment inquiry and have been ordered not to. Now, as a federal employee, they would have to hire their own attorneys and pay for them in order to go forward, because you would need to have somebody to defend you if the agency came back and said you've been insubordinate, and even if you have not, you've simply complied with the legal subpoena, you still have to sort that out, and it's a risk to your salary, it's a risk to your career, and it's something that becomes a black mark on your personnel roster, what you've done, your career. So it's not a small thing, it's a big thing for the witnesses who have not complied with the subpoenas. That there is good reason why they might not choose to, which could go to the financial, it could go to job security, could any of those reasons, but that's another side of why it has been so important that the members of the Foreign Service, the ambassadors, the Deputy Associate Secretary of State, Mr. Kemp, and Mr. Taylor, and then those that are coming in next week have actually come and stood up. But it is not cheap to hire an attorney to sit by you to help you be prepared to answer the questions that are asked, particularly knowing that the GOP are going to come up with a lot of extraneous questions that are intended not to ascertain the truth, but to throw you off. When you're talking about abuse of presidential power, which is in both Nixon and Clinton were part of the impeachment articles. One example is the president's order to the federal executives who are employed in the various departments like Treasury or OMB or Justice, whatever, not to cooperate. That is the president using his presidential power to defeat investigation as to whether he is being removed. That is not a legitimate use of presidential power. Presidential power under all of the authority in the Constitution and what people have written is intended to be used for the benefit of the country, not for personal benefit. And so when you are thinking about, well, what's an abuse of power, what you should think about, or I suggest that you do, is what the president doing or seeking to do for the benefit of the country, for our national security, or for his re-election, or for personal profits, like in the emoluments clauses. You may remember that just last month we had the president trying to have the next G7 meeting at his private property down in Florida. Clearly, that is a conflict of interest. It would also appear to be in conflict with the provisions in the Constitution which limit the president to his salary that he receives, not money from third foreigners or from other third parties. That's why all the gifts that presidents receive while they are president are not personal to them. And so if you go to a presidential library, you can go to George Bush's over by SMU, or Lyndon Johnson's, or Bill Clinton's, or Ronald Reagan's, any of them. You will see displays of gifts that have been made by different countries through their representatives or presidents to the United States. They're given to the president, but they're not given to him as an individual, and indeed, based upon the emoluments clause, he could not accept them personally. So those are examples of what can be an abuse of presidential authority, presidential power. You also have the issue of conspiracy. Now, usually going back to the Ukraine facts that we are looking at, you don't have just the president talking to Zelensky. You have the president using Giuliani, Perry, Sondland, and others who are like this Lee Paris and Fruman, and others that we may not know. But all of them were working to achieve a particular agenda. The agenda was something that was illegal because why? It was seeking to obtain for the president, through the use of the presidential authority, holding up federal money, that's our money, which was supposed to be used to fight the Russians in Ukraine, so that he could have Ukraine dust up or frame allegations of criminality against Joe Biden and to try to undo the determination that that the Russians interfered with our 2016 election. We've already talked about that a little bit, but those are the things that the House will be considering when they, and there are probably more that I have no knowledge of, but when they are considering what to refer to the Judiciary Committee to become articles of impeachment, and which will be voted on, but they're not, as Republicans would like to suggest, minor things. They are really part to the core of what the Constitution has set out as to what is expected of a person who is elected president while he is serving the office of the people, because the president serves the people. At least he's supposed to. And closing out this part, I wanted to go back to the preamble to the Constitution. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America." And then it goes on, which you all are well familiar with because we've been going through it today. If you are interested in distinctions between what the Constitution sets out and defines as treason versus what's in the U.S. Code, we can touch on that, but I imagine that you all may have some questions, or whoever is going to take the opposing side may be ready to come up. The last thing I would like to bring to your attention, this is a book that has recently come out. It's called Impeachment. This one is co-authored by a local a local professor at the SMU School of Law on Constitution, Jeffrey Engel. There are 3 other authors. John Meacham, who is talking, his section deals with the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. You have Timothy Naftali, who is written on the impeachment of Richard Nixon. And there's Peter Baker, who has written on the impeachment of Bill Clinton. One of the things that, first of all, it's not very long, but it's easy to read, and for those people who want to check what this said, it's all footnoted. So about the last 40 pages have footnotes that go to what's in the text, plus there's an index. So if you are interested in reading more about the history of the impeachment clause of the Constitution and those 4 impeachments, well, really 3 before the current one, I would recommend it to you. It's not the only book on impeachment, but it is a new one, and I recommend it as informative, supported by actual citations to actual books or records, historical records, so you don't have to rely on any of these authors' opinions. They are supported by whom they say they are, and then you can challenge and decide what you think of it. All right.
Go ahead.
Catherine, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
You were at the Democratic National Committee. Were you in 2016, were you in Washington, D.C.?
I was in Philadelphia. That is where the convention for the Democrats was held. I was a Hillary Clinton delegate from Texas.
Did you ever meet Seth Rich?
I did not meet Seth Rich, and I'm not sure he was alive at that time. I believe that he had been shot in a street burglary.
Okay. Were you aware that although the press has basically said case closed, that in fact Ellen Ratner, the sister of Michael Ratner, Julian Assange's attorney, conveyed a message to the Rich family that Seth and his brother Aaron had in fact sold the DNC leak to Julian Assange. Were you aware of that?
Well, I am not aware of it, but I will say to you that because I have read what our own intelligence professionals, after extensive investigation, concluded, and which the DC police, when they investigated Seth Rich's death, concluded, is that the internet's conspiracy theories, such as what you have described, were without any foundation at all. And so, what's your foundation for that assertion? I mean, basically, it's two verbal things. And I'm sure that if there were any objective facts to support it, that we would see that, because it would make a good story.
So it wouldn't sway you at all that a former NSA tech, William Binney, said it was impossible for the Russians to have done the hack?
Well, I think that I have to go with the professionals in our intelligence community who concluded that it was not impossible for the Russians to do the hacking, and that they had people acting under their direction to do it. I believe, if memory serves me, that it was the the RSG, which is part of the Russian, well, it used to be KGB.
Would that be GRU you're thinking of?
Yeah.
GRU.
Could be. Since they go a lot toward alphabets, it's sometimes I forget which one. But it seems to me that that particular theft of the DNC emails was orchestrated by the youth group in Macedonia, which was under the control of the Russians. Hi.
Hi, thanks for coming. I know Hillary referred to Putin as Hitler. Obama had troops on the Russian border. Do you think Trump should be impeached for not destroying Russia as we did Libya?
No, I think that decisions as to war are made by Congress, because Congress is under the Constitution given the authority to declare war. Now, whether or not the the policy decision of President Obama was correct with respect to the Russians' movement and taking Crimea and starting this war in the Donbas of Ukraine, was in hindsight one that would be, what I would do is irrelevant since I'm not the president, but I don't think that we seek a war with Russia, but I do think that we have to support our allies, and that where a country like Russia is initiating war with our allies, that we stand with them. And I think that that's been a history that served us well for the last 70 years.
Yes, given the fact that Trump has committed several acts that are contrary to American political and financial interests in the world, don't you think that he's committed the crime of lèse-majesté?
Well, that again is something that is factually based, would have to be factually based. That laissez-faire is not laissez-faire.
Lèse-majesté,
Okay.
which is really acting as a trade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's.
Acting as a trade.
Under the Constitution, what you have, and which makes it so difficult to prove, I think I'm just littering, Tom. Under the Constitution, the definition for treason against the United States is that treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, that is the United States, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort, that is the enemy's aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. So I haven't heard facts that meet that definition, and that's what the Constitution says.
Well, I would contend that giving comfort to the enemy, Russia, is exactly what he's done on numerous occasions. And when I get up, I'll illustrate what they were.
I'm not in disagreement with you, as a person. I think that it'll be a while before we are really going to know what the deal is between Putin and Trump, and that until you have all of the underlying facts and the actions that were taken, because we are currently, Russia is not overtly levying war against the United States. As you know, we have several treaties with them. The fact that they are violating them is another thing. But when you are talking about giving aid to a country that is against levying war against the United States, that's a very specific term, and I'm not certain that even though I profoundly have suspicion about what Trump is doing with Russia, we're not at war with them.
Well, what about, certainly a president that acts in the interest of a foreign power is certainly not acting in the interest of his own country. You know, and I'll iterate what I find would be conditions that would amount to lèse-majesté, actually.
Question.
Okay.
This is, it would be good to agree, actually.
It's not that I disagree with you. It is that as an attorney, I look at what the law requires, and that is why there's a problem with what you say. But that doesn't mean there wouldn't be an abuse of power under his violation of his oath of office, which are to protect and serve and defend the United States and the Constitution.
As a former AUSA and an attorney, what you described to me sounds like the construction of a theory of a case. Is Trump's intent in any of this? I mean, everyone seems to know his mind.
Does he have one? What you, in the law,
I guess if I were going to make this a more precise question, would you have a case to try here?
If I were representing the House of Representatives, I would have a case to try. At least I'd be putting together a case based upon what the facts are. I would not move forward until I had all of the evidence that I could obtain. But you have, when you talk about his intent, if we want to consider, for example, his tweeting at the ambassador from Ukraine, Ms. Masha, we're gonna call her Masha, because her friends call her Masha, and I'm a friend. But anyway, he clearly intended to tweet a negative, false statement against her while she was testifying.
Okay, what was that negative false statement?
Okay, the negative statement, I don't have it from memory, but first of all, he goes off and lies that when she was in Somalia, everything was bad, and that after whatever station she was in, everything was bad. And we know from the evidence that of her, the number of citations, awards, and commendations that she's received throughout her career at the State Department, having served at every place that she's served, that's false. But the other thing is to have the president, who has the authority not only to call you back from being an ambassador, but to terminate your employment or make it very difficult for you to continue, talking about what a bad person you are when you know it is false and you have no way to respond usually, that's considered threatening. If I were to say to Tom, I don't know why you had that awful cameraman doing these shows. He always messes up, and I really don't look 20 when I'm looking at my film. Okay. So that's just an illustration. You wouldn't be threatened because you know Tom wouldn't listen to me, but if you believed that I had a lot of sway with Tom, that could impact you.
Okay, but the reason she even knew about the tweet was because Schiff brought it up and read it during the hearing, correct?
Well, that is true, but that is an indication that he intended, since he knows that his comments, his tweets are read by both Republicans and the Democrats at the hearing, and that she would likely find out about it afterwards. Certainly that is enough under the law to be a legitimate attempt, or a jury could certainly decide that that was an attempt to intimidate her. Plus, all the other witnesses that are coming forward who also work for the federal government and therefore serve frequently at the president, at the something of the president.
At the
will of the president. Thank you. So you have the president has a lot of sway, plus the specific chain of command that you are reporting to. Like at state, you're reporting up the line to Pompeo, who has been absent in terms of supporting any of the State Department people who are testifying. So there would be every reason to feel like you were being challenged not to testify.
With regard to the obstruction of justice situation, whether it's through intimidating a witness, having ordering people to ignore subpoenas, and so on and so forth. The other thing that I haven't heard added to that list yet of charges is jury tampering. And given the fact that the Senate is his jury, and he has obviously indicated to the Republicans, one for all and all for one, mostly Trump, okay, that is jury tampering. And, it doesn't matter. We know the reason behind all the sycophants that he calls the cabinet, but this is a serious affair. So what do you think of that? Because they are required, are they not, to do their due diligence under the Constitution?
They are required to sit and listen to the evidence which is presented at the trial on the Articles of Impeachment. Now, whether or not the president's effort to engage in witness tampering or tampering with the Senate. I don't see that as something that is likely to be a part of the impeachment articles, for the reason that the Senate in the Constitution has the responsibility of listening to the evidence, and they can listen, they're not sequestered, so they can listen to whomever they want to. But before the House presents articles of impeachment, there's nothing that would give us a basis for saying that because Trump contacted John Cornyn and said, I don't like this article of impeachment, it's mean, you shouldn't vote against it. We do not know that that in and of itself would cause John Cornyn to do other than what he's already said he's going to do, which is to vote against impeachment.
But does it not seem strange to you that he has the political influence that he does over these members of the Senate who are indeed his jury in this matter?
Well, I'll say to you this: in the way that the constitutional process is set up, there does not appear to be a restriction on the Senate in terms of who the senators want to listen to. So I do not at this time see a basis for making an argument, a legal argument that could win, that his trying to get the senators to vote to acquit him or to otherwise interfere with the trial is something that can be proven beyond what is basically free speech. It could change, but right now I don't see the mechanism under the laws that we have which would pull that into consideration, because while it's sitting in the form of a jury, it is not the same as a federal jury.
They have to find guilt or innocence, and also from our perspective, we don't get to go chat with the jury if we're on trial for something, and we don't get to tell them what we really want them to do.
That is actually what your attorneys are doing for you. But the Senate is not the same as people who are involved in either a federal or state trial. It's a different construct, and that's all I can say. It may develop that there'll be something more specific that would support that kind of conclusion. At the present time, I don't know it, but I see a gentleman in a striped shirt who really wants that microphone.
I get my names mixed up. I think it was Cynthia Newman, who was Assistant Secretary of State. And she said that it cost the United States $5 billion to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine. So do you think President Trump should be impeached because he didn't successfully overthrow the government of Russia?
No, I think that you're missing the point, although certainly the government of Russia does not believe in democracy, and we would all be better off if it did. But what they were dealing with when you're talking about the wars in Ukraine in 2014, it was the people of Ukraine who rose up against the dictators or oligarchs of Ukraine. And it is the NATO and the United States and European countries which supported them. But we know from our history that our country, as well as other countries that we work with or are allies with, have tried to move forcefully or less forcefully in other countries, and that is certainly true. But since we're talking about a specific thing and a specific event that a specific president has engaged in for purposes of this impeachment inquiry, it seems to me just another one of those shiny objects that the GOP like to toss in the air to deflect your attention, rather than something that's pertinent objectively to whether or not the inquiry will obtain enough facts to do an article of impeachment or articles of impeachment of Donald Trump, which is the issue that I'm talking about. I see a gentleman with a hat that wants, sorry, sir.
Yeah, because we have a very stable genius.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. My husband hasn't quite come to that view, but I know he will.
I was referring to somebody else. I mean, can you give us our expertise on applying 25 to 45? It's the 25th Amendment in the situation that we're dealing with now.
I think that the 25th Amendment certainly is, there's a gentleman, hey Tom, there's a gentleman in back of you with a hat on. The 25th Amendment requires the cabinet, those are all Trump appointees, to move forward and vote that he is not able to perform his duties. Under the present cabinet, I think that it is zero to nothing to think that that's going to happen. Although I certainly believe he is not emotionally stable and competent to run the United States and to take care of its interests. Sir?
My question was the fact that I think when you quoted Senator John Carter said that he was going to vote against it. He hadn't heard the evidence. So I think most of the Republicans know that President Trump has control of the Republican Party. If they do something he doesn't like, he runs them against them, they win. They lose. So that's I don't think that may not fit in any one of the definitions, but I think that has some impact.
Well, I would agree, one, that John Cornyn and Ted Cruz should commit to listening to all of the evidence that is presented at trial and to vote based upon what is required by their oath of office to protect and defend the United States of America and the Constitution. I hope they will.
You appear to be certain that Trump has committed some impeachable offenses. If that's the case, why hasn't Adam Schiff been able to specify exactly what those offenses are?
Well, the fact that I have my view is just I have my view. I don't speak for Adam Schiff, but I think that the Intelligence Committee and the people who are involved in the inquiry are doing the right thing to collect the evidence. The fact that, based upon listening to what the president says and reading the undisputed facts which are reported in many media and caused me to believe that yes, he has committed bribery and abuse of power with respect to the withholding of arms that had been congressionally authorized to Ukraine so that he could try to force the president of Ukraine to open up a criminal investigation against Joe Biden and to try to shift the determination of who interfered with the 2016 election. But I'm doing what a lot of people are doing. I'm listening to the hearings, or just thinking that this is the third impeachment set of hearings that I have listened to. I'm getting old, but anyway, yes, sir.
Well, just for the record, I dispute all of your undisputed facts that you received from the media.
Show me the facts, or as they say, show me the beef.
Let's start with Alexandra Chalupa.
Okay, now let's talk about Alexandra Chalupa and what specific reported objective document are you relying on to support whatever it is that you're going to say about her?
I'm relying on the testimony of a former Secret Service.
And
Mr.
who is
Dan
that?
Bongino.
And where is that available to read?
He's
Where-
on the internet.
who-
Okay, now
who
I'm
is
supposed
the-
to make this into a question, so I disputed, but then I was gonna go to a question. So my question is, were you aware that in 2016, Alexander Chalupa, a member of the DNC, went to the Ukraine and was able to obtain the Black Ledger, which is considered a forgery?
Who is it considered a forgery by other than the GOP?
My sources on the internet.
Okay.
Not the Washington Times.
What I would say is this. If you identify the sources, their names, who they work for, where their commentary is available, and how they have sourced whatever statements they have made, I would be very interested in knowing that. But the internet is full of trolls, bots, and disinformation, so I'm not certain.
Like Dr. Dave Janda, former assistant to the Surgeon General.
Okay, now
former
why does
Secret
she have
Service.
no? Okay.
David Janda.
Okay, let me ask you a question, backing up on it. What is it about the fact that she was a doctor working with the Secret Service that causes you to believe that she would have firsthand objective fact knowledge on whatever it is she said?
Well, first it's a he, it's Dr. David Janda. And the other person is a former Secret Service, which is Dan Bongino. Yesterday, he did an interview with President Trump on his show.
Well, were they on Hannity or were they on one of the other shows that he likes?
And that was on his show. He has his own show.
Okay.
Now, but to the case of Alexander Chalupa, we are basing the allegation against.
Question.
Okay, but it's
Okay.
based on what I'm calling a forgery. You're saying, see, what happens is every time one of the evidence comes up, like on Seth Rich or on any of these other things, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN declare it debunked. And then I find out, I go to investigate, and I find out nobody debunked anything.
Well, let me respond to your statement, which wasn't a question. With respect to Seth Rich and his death, you do have the investigation by the D.C. police.
They did no investigation.
And the FBI. You may not consider it an investigation,
It wasn't
but.
an investigation.
Okay. If you were to do a thorough search, you would find that they did file a report, that they also recognized that groups like Baudet, the gentleman that you mentioned that just interviewed Trump, are great for saying things that are kind of what they believe, but not based on any objective research or fact statement. That is why I'm skeptical. Now, I've lived long enough, as have you, to know that sometimes you don't have everything you expect that you will have at the beginning, and you get later facts. One of my good friends to this day is persuaded that there was another rifleman at they killed Kennedy.
Yes.
And I know that there are people who firmly believe that, and I don't. And my friend and I have just agreed, like people do who are friends, to simply agree to disagree and not argue about it because life is too short. So anyway.
Okay. I think we're done. I think you get to sit down.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the very challenging and thoughtful questions this group always has, and so I appreciate Tom inviting me back, and I appreciate the fact that you all have so many good questions that I am challenged to come up with answers, even if I don't end up with agreeing or having you agree with me. Thank you so very much.
first. Okay, well, I'll go up there.
Now it's your turn to talk. You got 5 minutes to respond to the speaker said, either for or against.
Kenneth, you want to come up?
Come on up here, Kenneth.
Thank you very much.
1945.
You have 5 minutes to respond.
Okay. Oh, do I use that? Okay, use that.
Yeah. We're done with this.
Okay. Catherine, thank you very much for that information. That was great. On this topic of impeachment, I think it's just one of the most important things that is faced our country at this time, and I think if we step back and think, why is this happening? Why should we go forward with this? It has to do with, you have to go back to what's the whole idea of our government. We are a constitutional republic where the intention was to have a government with limited powers. And in order for the government to have limited powers, the design is that there would be 3 separate branches that would act as checks and balances on each other so as to limit the power of government. This particular president does not believe in those limitations. He has already stated that he says that Article 2 of the Constitution means he can do what he wants. He's actually had an attorney in federal court actually tell judges that if he really did shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, that he couldn't be prosecuted. He actually believes that. So we have a person in office who does not believe in the fundamental premise of our system of government. He is the president, but does not believe in the premise of the government. What he has done, and the reason why he's being impeached, is he has used the power of the presidency to help him win the next election. Essentially, he has cheated already on the election of 2020. He has used the State Department, he has used elements of the Justice Department, and he has asked foreign countries to help him investigate his opponents. That is what he has done. He has done this by his own admission in his famous transcript of his perfect conversation. He has admitted this on the White House lawn. He said, yeah, I want Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, and I think China should do it too. And one of his, I would say, co-conspirators, Mick Mulvaney, has also confessed to this. Yep, that's why we held up the money. Get over it. So what we're doing now in this process is we are simply corroborating what they have essentially confessed to. If we are going to permit a president to use this kind of power, then you don't really have any limits on presidential power, and you don't have free and fair elections. Because the person running against Donald Trump, they don't have $390 million of taxpayer money to use as a weapon in the election. They don't have a State Department that they can use against him. And so you don't have a free and fair election. And this is why he must be impeached in order to protect the basic idea of the Constitution as it was set up.
What we have is a double standard. We have a double standard, especially in the media, where we have the greatest divide, where I cannot go to any of the major papers and get anything but 97 to 99% anti-Donald Trump news, which really rates as propaganda 24/7, very serious propaganda. And I've confronted former journalists on this, and I say, look, this is not journalism. This is not a statement of the facts. This is propaganda, and you should know it. One of the things is it doesn't matter whether it's a Mueller report which did not deliver, or any of the various things that have not delivered against Trump, is I never get any admission from the other side, from a Democrat, that maybe there's something wrong, maybe they're wrong about this. Now, okay, you're saying that Trump is using his position to go after Joe Biden. My question to you would be, why are the Democrats allowing a candidate who obviously did pay for play, to run for president. Why do you have that as your lead, one of your lead candidates right now? But it's not just that, because not only is Hunter Biden involved in the Ukraine Burisma deal, where he received, and they just released some documents on this, there were 43 payments from Burisma, monthly payments. Over 30 of those were for $83,000 for a total of $3.1 million that Hunter Biden received for what? All of the, see, we're supposed to say, okay, we can see Trump's mind, we know what his intent is. Well, what is CrowdStrike? Can anybody tell me what CrowdStrike is?
Yes.
That's the agency in the Ukraine who declared that the Russians hacked the server, the DNC server. Okay. The only problem is see, the FBI has the greatest forensics lab. Oh, I'm speaking too loud, sorry. The FBI has the greatest forensics lab in our country, possibly in the world. Why would they not investigate the server? That makes no sense. But see, we have a lot of things that do not make sense in this whole investigation. John Kerry's son is in on the China deal. I understand that the nephew of Whitey Bulger is also in on the China deal, where they've got over $1 billion. And if I go back a little ways, who remembers the Bundy Ranch affair? You know what that was about? That was over a China solar deal that Harry Reid's son was involved in. And they wanted the Bundy Ranch for a carbon offset for the construction of that solar farm. Now, we nearly got a shooting revolution going in this country over Harry Reid and a special deal for his son there. And the fact that the BLM actually had kill lists of people they were intending to take out. As far as the DNC server and so forth, nobody brought up anything about Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the whole affair with the Owan brothers. Basically, the DNC was protected like a sieve holds water. And now we're trying to say, okay, it was the Russians. Who wrote the Mueller report? It's pretty obvious when Robert Mueller got up there, either he's suffered some severe setbacks or he didn't write his own report. Most of the people I know who looked at it say that, is it Weinstein? I'm trying to think, who was the main prosecutor under there? Andrew Weinstein? Weissman, there we go, Weissman. Andrew Weissman. And Weissman has an interesting history that if you go back, he was involved in the whole Enron affair, and I'm trying to remember who he got. There was some, was it Anderson? I'm trying to remember the accounting firm he got basically shut down. And the Supreme Court reversed him 9-0 on his prosecution of that case. So that's Weissman's great record. We've got a divide here. We've got a huge divide. Now, what my news is telling me is that the very intelligence agencies you are relying on are dirty.
Well, from my viewpoint, I think the whole Biden deal in Ukraine is somewhat irrelevant, especially from a European viewpoint. The Russians from the 1930s had a habit of attacking smaller countries, and my wife's country, Finland, was one. And so the NATO alliance was formed in order to protect Europe. And one of the first items that I would hold against Trump was that he disparaged the NATO alliance and said he didn't believe that he would, if there were trouble, he would actually participate in the NATO alliance. Now, that is very concerning to small countries like Latvia, Lithuania, and so on, who share a border with Russia. Now that was his first inkling to the Europeans that maybe America cannot be trusted anymore. And so what else has Russia done under Putin? Well, they attacked Georgia. There was another part of the Soviet Union. And then, of course, they attacked Crimea and took it over. And then, of course, they attacked the eastern edge of Ukraine. Okay? Now, these are all attacks on small countries. And of course, we know why Trump is so favorable towards Russia. Because, as I said 2 years back, that Russia is his paymaster now. He is such a splendid businessman that no American bank would lend him any more money. And his son, Trump Jr., has said, that we get our money from Russia to fund our golf courses in Europe these days. So it's quite evident that Trump's personal affairs are wrapped up in this thing. And they have been all along. So, and of course now, when we come to Syria, he said, okay, well, we'll withdraw, and of course the Russians move into the vacuum. And so it's very troubling that this person, in fact, is really favoring Russian interests. Never says a bad word against them. And that's because he's dependent on Russian money, and his family is too. And he is bound, and his family is bound. The only money he can get now is this dirty money from the oligarchs in Azerbaijan and these other very devious countries. And of course he wanted to build Trump Tower in Moscow and so on and so forth. So the Russians, that's why, in fact, they knew they had it. This is why, of course, they did certainly interfere in the elections in this country, and they have also interfered in elections elsewhere, like in Great Britain too now. And the Tory party, in fact, has just withheld a report on that. So, as I said before, I think he's guilty of lèse-majesté, which is really a traitor to your country.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, weakening the Western alliance, I mean, when you say, well, we won't support it, we might not support it, is very, very dangerous for someone like Putin. And he's taken advantage of it, as I've just said, in several small countries. Now, if you don't think that's case for impeachment, I don't know what. Now, in England, of course, we wouldn't allow a person like Trump to be a president, or, in fact, the power of the president, the US president has, in fact, is the power that the prime minister now has. He or she, is it now a he, has a cabinet. Because Britain, moved away from 300 years ago from this system America now has. And so what would happen is, if they came out with that stunt in the parliament, the prime minister is beholden to the vote in parliament. If he pulled this stunt, he'd be gone. So there's no, now the only way you can't have a vote of no confidence, so the mechanism is impeachment. It's a very curious thing, but when you have such a, I would say, very poor system of structure of government, you have this sort of thing. You have a person that's totally unfitted, acts to weaken the Western alliance, and actually this weakening could cause, there could be, you tempt people like Trump to attack small countries, and it could lead to a war over that. Because America, we saw that before the war. America was isolationist. Winston Churchill knew what the Nazis were. America said, well, we don't care. We're not worried, that fascism will take over. They could have taken over the whole of Europe. And I'm especially upset because my family, and myself lived through the Second World War and were very much harmed by it. So this sort of thing is very concerning. And I think Trump is really should be removed on that ground alone. I don't care about the what happened in Ukraine, the Bidens. I mean, to me, that's irrelevant. It's much more serious than that. This person really is totally unfitted for office. In Britain, it could never happen. But when you have this popularity poll with a confirmed liar and a con man, this is the sort of person you get. There's not a... Now, the Prime Minister has those powers, but the Prime Minister has to be elected in England. And also, he's appointed by his own party. So you wouldn't get these people with this complete lack of legislative experience, to lead the country. And, anyway, that's it.
You feel it on my feelings.
I guess I didn't get you
I would like to thank the person who made the presentation. I think she was, from my vantage point, very fair and really a stickler for sticking for the facts. And that's what you learn in law school, so I'd like to extend that to you. I guess my rebuttal is against my good friend right here. And he was talking about the Democratic Party, and I said, he's talking about how many guys have been indicted in the Republicans that's connected to President Trump. So, you can't see that, but you can see these other things from conspiracy theories. But everybody have a right to their own perception, but I think it's wrong. I agree. I've watched President Trump 20 years before he ran for president. With some kind of amusement. I didn't think America would ever elect someone that ill-equipped to be president, but he's president. And I think it's very unfortunate. I think to be isolated as a nation, if we continue now in the course that he has, is going to be detrimental to the United States. We cannot be isolated. There's too much that other nations have, we got to have to do what we do. And that's it. And as far as I'm concerned, you talk about, the reason Congressman Speaker Pelosi talked about bribery, because that's written in the Constitution. Everybody else, Lord, don't know what quid pro quo is. It's something for something. I used to use this when I was dating girls. I would use that word, they didn't know what it was. But I was being deceptive too. But I learned since I have daughters, I wouldn't want nobody else to be doing that. So. But they were smart women, and they didn't acquiesce, so nothing happened. But anyway, one of the people that was interviewed yesterday indicated that was here at the conversation, that President Trump was not interested in what's going on in that nation. He was interested in getting junk on Biden and his son. And that is for his own personal use. And he used the Attorney General as his personal attorney, and he's our Attorney General, not Trump's Attorney General. He's done, I don't know, no other president has done as much as he's done to abuse his power. And he has never told the truth. Never told the truth. And how would anyone believe what he says when he doesn't ever tell the truth? And so, I don't know, some people just love people, respect people for whatever reason they have, but we all have to be kind of objective in what we observe and what we articulate, because you can get anything from the internet and you can get anything from a book. Any position you have, you can find someone to collaborate. And you got to have enough wisdom yourself to say, no, is this true or is this not true? You got to have some parameters that you use, otherwise you'd be very confused. And I think that's what's happening to a large number of people in America, is we get confused. There were problems that was going on in the United States between people who had lost their job in manufacturing industry. And everybody forgetting that President Obama asked twice to come up with money to go out a stipend, pay their tuitions, go to school, and it was a job for them when they finished. But the Republicans wouldn't fund it. And then Bernie Sanders picked up on it, and Hillary Clinton never said anything about it. You know, she was a poor person to run for president. I supported her, but I felt that she was better than Trump, and I still think she probably would have been better than him. But I recognize different people have their own perception, but this president deserves to be impeached. And when we have people like Carney and Ted Cruz already decided before they get evidence, that tells you in all the Republicans that way. Many Republicans know what he's doing is wrong, but they go along with it because they want that job. So I hope that in the leader of the House Intelligence Committee, he's trying to go through and get the facts. And President Trump is obstructing justice because he won't let the people testify. Thank you. Tom.
Okay. This will be the third impeachment session, historical moment since I've been in this country. And as it relates to validity of media coverage, okay, first off, I choose to believe journalists who have to go out, hunt down the facts, go into the halls of Congress and be at the White House and what have you, and they're reporting on these issues, and that we're very fortunate to also have in our journalistic community, the mainstream journalistic community, not those existing on the internet, journalists that have actually also lived through these impeachment proceedings. Those who have not only know the history of each of the impeachments, but can really effectively and intelligently speak to it if asked about themselves, given an opinion. But most of them won't, they may compare, but they really will not, a good journalist will not give you their opinion, they just report the facts. And as it relates to the facts around Donald Trump, the majority of mainstream journalists are reporting what comes out of his mouth. Okay? They're not getting it from, you know, some conspiracy theory over here or there. And then I guess, then again the next day they have to turn around and report the fact that he's reversed what he said the day before. Okay? And in fact denied that he ever said it. Okay? So he does definitely have the record for the most misstatements or lies out of the mouth of a president of the United States. At least I've never seen it before. And I have to tell you that, yes, we're talking to the leader of this the leader of this country. And when have you ever seen in your lifetimes a president of the United States standing on the world stage with murderous thugs and praising them and diminishing our own intelligence services in deference to what he said he didn't do it? Okay? When have you ever seen you know, there may be little nitpickings with regard to our traditional allies, okay, but when have you ever seen a president of the United States disparage our traditional allies throughout the world, but yet praise these thugs, these dictators? Okay, I mean, are you truly saying, or do you truly believe that Putin is a man of upstanding character with a magnanimous heart, and his objective in the world is to spread peace? Okay, I don't think so. If you do, I don't know what to tell you. Read a book, okay? And you know, the fact that this guy stands there and says a president should be able to do whatever he sees fit to run the country. That to me is a traitorous statement because it's automatically, you know, relinquishing the oath of office that he took when sworn in. So I don't know what's so mind-bending about understanding stuff that we are hearing with our own ears, that we are seeing with our own eyes, okay? And even though he has probably, you know, less than a 2-digit vocabulary, you know, the man, the words are coming out of his mouth. No one put them there. This is him. And we knew it was him well before he was ever elected to office, okay? So, and Nixon, I guess, came the closest to him when he said, when he was out of office, that the president is above the law. And this guy thinks he is too. He's already stated that in 100 different ways. Mueller report, if Mueller could have indicted, he would have indicted. But he couldn't indict a sitting president. And how you can do away with the Mueller report when so many of the thugs that surrounded Trump are in jail is beyond me to begin with. And as it relates to Biden, it's not a good look that Biden's son was on these boards in Ukraine. I don't go with that one, or even China. Not a good look. But I certainly also think it's not a good look that we paid for an office for the daughter and son-in-law of the President of the United States to sit in the White House. Okay, and I mean, what is her job? To babysit daddy? To make sure he doesn't go too far overboard? While she collects all the trademarks or copyrights or whatever, I think it was trademarks, from China as he's sitting in the Oval Office? Not a good look, and obviously, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, to talk about Biden out of one side of your mouth and not mention Ivanka and Jared out of the other side is hypocritical by a long shot, okay? So, as far as I'm concerned, he is what I call a clown on parade, okay? This is who we have for President of the United States, and yes, I do consider his actions to absolutely be a traitor. He is our Quisling, okay? And the abuse of power, the emoluments clause, love to see how much he's really sent to the Treasury for his hotel rooms and restaurants and what have you. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. And so if we seem to be really confused as to why you can't see this, then I'm afraid we'll always be separate. But hopefully, you know, this particular impeachment may go the way of where Nixon was heading, because, you know, the house of cards is beginning to fall a little bit, okay? And we've already seen Republicans drop out, early retire, okay, or choose not to run, because as Jeff Flake said, I didn't vote for him the first time round, and I sure enough was not going to be standing on a stage with him, you know, at a rally, and have him, you know, back me, which is what I would have had to have done in order to run for my seat again, because he would have put whatever force he could behind me if you don't disagree with him. So I didn't vote for him the first time, and I certainly wouldn't be voting for him the next time round if that eventuated. So anyhow, that's all I have to say, but this is our country, and we better do whatever we bloody well can to protect the piece of paper that's supposed to preserve it and give us our rights. Okay? Great job, I forgot to say. Great presentation.
Again, I do appreciate the opportunity to hear opposing opinions, because we definitely have some opposing opinions. But that's good. And I appreciate the fact that we can do it in a peaceful manner. I mean, we're not shooting at each other or anything like that, so that's very good.
Almost.
So anyway, I want to go back to the 2016 election. I mean, I've heard it said, I don't know how many times, that Hillary won the popular vote by 3 million votes. Well, Robert Epstein, who is a liberal Democrat psychologist who voted for Hillary, testified before Congress about a study he did studying the influence of big tech on internet searches, and he said in his study that Hillary got 3 million to 10.4 million votes from big tech's manipulation of internet searches. Now that immediately wipes out Hillary's so-called $3 million popular vote advantage, and gives Trump a potential 7.4 million popular vote advantage. So it's not necessarily so that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Aside from that, what we've got here is like a 3-year temper tantrum by the Democrats because they didn't get what they wanted. What I hear as impeachable offenses are basically policy differences. He's not doing what we want, and we should impeach him for that. I have yet to hear any solid crime that Trump has actually committed. I mean, you can, not like him, and you can say he's doing all kinds of horrible things, but Adam Schiff has been twisting the process to suit his own purposes, and he has yet to come up with any crime. Robert Mueller spent 2.5 years trying to come up with a crime, and everybody was just salivating and saying, well, just wait till that report comes out, we're going to nail him with what's in that report, and there was nothing there. There's no crime. So the Democrats have had all this time to come up with an impeachment vote. I think they've had 3 or 4 impeachment votes. I know one of the impeachment votes was like 323 against to 97 for. So that's not going to happen. Congress is not going to impeach him because there's no crime to impeach him for. I mean, you can assume there's a crime, and you can say there's a crime, but there is no crime because it's not there. So he's never going to be impeached, even by the Democrats, because there isn't a crime there. Now, when you want to talk about crimes, Joe Biden brags on video how he told the Ukrainian government that if you don't fire that prosecutor by 6 p.m., you're not going to get your $1 billion. Now, if that's not a quid pro quo, I don't know what is. And that is a direct violation of Title 18, Section 112. And you can look it up if you want. It's uscode.house.gov. And look up Title 18, Section 112, and it tells you exactly what that crime is. And that's exactly what Joe Biden did. That is a crime that Joe Biden committed. It is a direct violation of Title 18. You can't find anything like that for anything Trump has done. No one can find it. He's not going to be impeached because there's no crime. I mean, you can hate him, you can disagree with his policy, you can say he's a jerk, you can do whatever you want, but there's no crime. And as far as Trump, representing us, first of all, I think he won the popular vote. He probably won it by 7.4 million. But anyway, whether or not he did, he's elected, and when he has a rally, he has tens of thousands of people at every rally, no matter where he has them in this country. What Democrat has that? Beto had 1,300 people at his rally in Grand Prairie when Trump had 25,000 inside the American Airlines Center and maybe another 25,000 outside. I have 2 friends that went there to the Beto rally, and they said it wasn't more than about 1,300 there. So I'm sorry, the Democrats just don't really represent most of America, because if they did, they would be having tens of thousands of people at their rallies. And Hillary couldn't even draw a crowd at a state fair.
I suppose repeated lying is hate to burst your bubble, Ken, but he's been convicted of crimes already. This week he was fined $3 million for fraud. His campaign funds used illegally. He paid settlements for, I think it was like $40,000 Texans involving his Trump University. And as Jeffries, the pastor Jeffries says he's not a racist, however, he has been convicted of racial discrimination in the city of New York. So, I mean, there's crimes right there. You talk about his character. I don't know, is it the governor or the mayor of New York, during the election process, said, "We New Yorkers know a con when we see it." And that is exactly what Trump is. Recently, I saw the movie. We knew already that he was part of the real estate mafia in New York before he was elected. And recently, I saw the movie about Roy Cohen, and I thought, oh my God, this was his mentor. I dare you to see that movie. I just dare you to see it. It's just right in your face, and he trusts that. He trusts that if he just puts it right in your face, you won't believe it. And in fact, just this week, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, he pardoned. Here he is under impeachment process, yet he pardons soldiers, one of whom murdered an unarmed Iraqi or Iranian soldier, I forget, and then another soldier who ordered those in his command, he ordered them to shoot civilians. And when the military was asked what they thought of him doing this, they said it's completely disgusting and undermining the rule of law of the military. This is what our government says about him. He's had, you know, a person by who they associate with. He's had 6 people convicted, sent to prison. What else?
3 wives.
I'm sorry?
3 wives.
3 wives.
3 wives.
I'm guilty of that.
Well, I'm guilty. You're not president.
Well, I heard a police officer tell a mother one time about her son that he's only comfortable around criminals. He's not comfortable around other people. Well, this is who his associates are. Weinstein, is that his name? He socialized with him. Epstein, thank you. He was one of the people he associated with. Roy Cohen was one of his mentors. Giuliani, you could say good, you know, people have different opinions about him. And then the people he admires. The Arabian Prince, who's a murderer. Putin, who is a murderer. And Kim Jong-un, who is a very brutal murderer. These are people he admires, so that tells you what his character is right there. But the main thing now, this is his character, but I agree with what Kenneth said earlier. When the President of the United States thinks that they can do whatever they want and say it, this undermines our whole democracy. And that is the crime right there. And I do believe he will be impeached. Thank you.
We got another one, Tom.
Yeah.
Another guy here.
It's my first time here, by the way. It's a great group.
We like it.
Yeah. I want to thank the speaker too. I mean, taking a topic like this is like trying to watch paint dry. And I was just thinking, God, I'm glad I don't have to explain it. It's so nebulous and cumbersome, but you did a great job is my point. So thank you. Yeah, I have to laugh at us because we fall on our prejudices. I like this party, I like that party. You know, I say a pox on all their houses, the politicians, quite frankly. So, and I also think it's laughable. I mean, why would it, for years we said we want a plain-speaking person in the White House. We're tired of politicians. And I came across a tweet the other day on my Facebook, and I'm laughing because it preceded the election, and you know, back, you know, almost 4 years ago, and I said to my friends on Facebook, "Wait till you see what draining the swamp looks like." That's what I said back then. So he's doing what he said he's going to do, but I mean, we're getting exactly what we asked for. You know, he had been running on Twitter years before. I followed him for a long, long time while he's accumulating millions of followers, and he just ran right up the middle to the goal line because the Republican Party made it easy for him. Give him credit, he was successful. So, and I'm not going to say good, bad. I'm going to wait for the process to do its thing, because I do believe our country will always do the right thing. Sometimes we don't always do it on the time frame that people want it to be, but ultimately democracy, I believe, and maybe I'm, you know, being naive. I don't think so.
You're being naive. You're being naive.
I don't know. I mean, you know, civil rights. We lived through that. Came in the '60s. How long did it take for us to get a civil rights bill?
We're so post-racial now.
Well, it's not even a question of that. I mean, but ultimately, it's a good thing. Everybody should have good rights. Everybody should have equal rights. So, but, I mean, it came way past the Civil War. So we go backwards, we go forward. You know, Obama gets elected, like him or not like him. The country goes conservative then. I mean, we've always had this push-shove political framework. And that's just the way it is. But you know, I'm looking at, you know, we're pillaring the Republicans right now for not coming out against the sitting president, and I'm looking at the vote from the one, you know, for Bill Clinton. Well, guess what? That was exactly a partisan vote too, to not impeach when he was going through this sort of thing. So I'm not defending it, I'm just saying these are politicians. They're not going to do anything until it hurts them politically. And we can get all exercised about it and say, oh, you Republicans, you're not doing this. And then I remember back around Hillary times, we're all old enough to have seen a lot of things. The very same thing happened on the Democratic side. So I'm not saying, you know, so nothing's happening that hasn't happened before. You know, and they're not, and no, votes are not going to change next year unless it becomes politically not expedient to support the president. That's just the way that's going to be. So, I mean, one of the best courses I took in college had to do with poli sci. He's a brilliant man, Harvard trained. You know, and he just, you know, he said, politicians are not weather vanes. They're barometers. So if you're expecting them to lead the way, that's not going to happen. They are weighing public sentiment. And then they're going to go this way, they're going to go that way. You know, same thing with people on talk radio, be it from the left, be it from the right. You know, right now, right-wing radio holds sway, and they're able to make money. Now, all the people, the talking heads on right-wing radio, let's say the country went to a left-wing shift very demonstrably. So do you think those people are going to sit there and lose their jobs? They're going to sway with the political climate. They're entertainers. They're not these great patriots that they're saying. They're providing entertainment. So we want to make them into those things. But they will sway, I'll tell you. If that would ever happen, you know, Rush Limbaugh, or what's his name from Minnesota?
Franken.
Yeah, let's say, you know, he had a show at one time. They would all sway, and so would the Congress. I mean, how many people have switched parties politically? over the years when the political climate has shifted, or they've left, you know, because they knew they weren't electable at that point. So they're barometers, they're not thermometers, like my political science professor said. But you know, I made a very conscious decision at the beginning of the year, because I was a political junkie. I was on everything, and you know, and I got depressed about the whole thing. And why am I feeling so rotten all the time? It's because I got my nose buried in every single news situation that's out there. So we're running through a process right now, and if you're watching this day by day by day by day, you're going to feel miserable, because you're either going to be happy one day, you're going to be miserable the next day. So I said, I'm going to take my obsessions and put them in sports now. That's where I've gone since the beginning of the year. I feel great. I feel much, much better. I keep an eye on the news. Some people say, oh, Steve, you got your head in the sand now. You know,
who's going to win Baylor OU?
Huh?
Who's going to win Baylor
OU?
OU?
It's not so much college. Probably, well, that's a good question. I don't know. But I'm interested, you know, and I feel better, you know, at the end of the day as a result. So when we were growing up, we weren't political junkies 24/7, but now we are. And it's because the political parties have pivoted us. The media have pivoted us, so it takes over our lives. And, you know, we have a political class out there. They're fundraising 24/7. Your email, right? We used to have a political season, and then we went about our lives the rest of the time. Am I right?
Yes.
We've changed. We've been manipulated. So this is a process, and we all think this is going to happen to Trump. That's going to happen to Trump. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Maybe they're going to investigate Hillary. Things are going to come out, and they're going to go after them. Maybe, maybe not. But let's wait. Let's go live our lives and be a little happier along the way. And the outcomes will be the outcomes that they are. So you watch it once a week rather than glued on it 24/7. You know, I work for Oregon Pest Control, and depending on what part of town I am, I inspect homes for them. There's fox on in these homes. When I go into Dallas County, I'm out in Plano, I go there, I go to Preston Hollow, fox on every single one. But, so, I mean, people are glued to this stuff, I mean, and I don't think it's healthy. So, and the last point I'm going to make, and I didn't mean to be up here this long, but, you know, I think sometimes we hate our own Americans more than we hate our enemies. You know? We are such a political war with each other. And, you know, friendships are destroyed over things like this, differing opinions. And I'm sad about that. That you guys here, we can come together, but, you know, that's not happening in a lot of places. And, you know, people are talking about taking up guns if we don't get this outcome or that outcome. Right? Crazy talk. So that's what I had to say. Oh, and your great group. I've really enjoyed coming here tonight. So, yeah.
Come again.
Yeah. Keep your mouth shut, right?
Hey, thank you for coming.
Thank Jerry here he brought me on here.
Earlier today, I spoke with John Carman, a former Secret Service officer and Customs. John Carman served in a lot of different capacities. He brought up that during Trump's administration, with the new seizure laws, we just received $200 billion from El Chapo, from Mr. Guzman, from his activities, and Obama gave billions to the Iranians. The ambassador to Ukraine, and I have trouble with her name as well.
Yovanovitch.
Yovanovitch?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, good close. She is on record of speaking ill of the president.
No, she is not. That is.
There are records that are being
No, there are
released.
no records of that, and that is.
See, this is one of those issues of the media.
No, but you see, it's really my rebuttal time, and you're doing it twice.
That's true.
And I
Okay.
think that, you know.
Well, let me do this, is let me give it back to you. I had a few more points, but it's gone long, I admit. So I guess, Tom, did you want to say something? And she's got it back. Okay. All right, thank you.
I want to thank our speaker for doing a great job here today. I'm not going to take much time here because it would be wrong. We're getting close near the end. A few things. A politician, they say a good politician figures out.
I want to thank you for inviting me. I feel like it's my rebuttal time and I'm not being given it, but I do have to get home.
Oh, come on up here.
Go say your rebuttal, please.
Come on up here.
Please,
Yeah.
come on. Come up there. Thank you. 10 seconds. You say what you want to say, Catherine.
Well, what I want to say deals with a subject that we are here on, impeachment. And what I want, I believe that there is a misconception about what the process is that's going on right now. Well, none of us know what the answer is going to be, but one of the questions that was raised is about why doesn't someone else do something, or just like we were just listening to about Yanukovych having spoken about something. That's been completely debunked, but on the conspiracy circle on the internet, it will come up and it will be repeated and nobody will believe that it's been rebutted. So, as I think the gentleman down there pointed out, we have differences of opinion, which is all right, but you can't make up your own facts. And that's where we have to remember that whatever it is that we are relying on, if it is coming off the internet, we should be looking for the sources which support what the person that we are going to rely on is saying. With respect to the newspapers, the reason that I do rely on what I read in the newspapers is that they are able to be fact-checked. I can look to third sources or other sources to see if that's accepted. Similarly, I can do research on the internet for more than one source to see whether or not what's been reported is verified by somebody who has a copy of the supposed report and who wrote it, and is it double sourced or just made up out of whole cloth or what. I think that that is what we are missing here. But someone said, what law has been broken? Well, 18 U.S.C. 2001 is the federal bribery charge code that would be applying in addition to the broader, what's in the Constitution. I mean, because that really goes back to history when the founding fathers were writing the Constitution, and there are a lot of papers that were written contemporaneously by the people who were actually writing the different versions of the Constitution, different sections of them. So you can go back and check that. But essentially, if you get down to it, it is when the president or another public official, but we're talking about the president now, has a circumstance where he or she, God bless us if we ever get she, but anyway, takes something in order to do a service or to use his public powers for a private purpose that is not for the benefit of the United States. That's what we're talking about. But if you want to hear what 201 says, 18 U.S.C., Title 18 is where most of the laws of the United States have been. I'll get it, don't worry. Didn't staple these as well as I expected to. But if you want to know, it says that if you, for the purposes of this section, that is bribery of public officials and witnesses, It includes an officer or employee or person acting for or on behalf of the United States. When President Trump had his minions out in Ukraine, and when he himself was talking to the president of Ukraine, he was wanting to hold up, he did in fact hold up the congressionally authorized military funds in order to get, to force the president of Ukraine to start a criminal investigation on a political matter which had no relation to an interest of Ukraine other than getting the military money that President Trump was holding back. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about bribery. That's when we're talking about corrupt action. So if you think there is not a federal, if you think, first of all, you had to have a federal section of the United States Code to be violated in order to be impeached, that's wrong, based on everything that's in the history of the Constitution. But even if you wanted to, you could also just look at 201 and see the actions which our president has taken openly and publicly. Now, there was another statement, well, there were several statements that I, as you already know because of my presentation, that I'm not in agreement with. But this is the thing. Tuning out is not the answer. What is the answer is, in my judgment, taking the actions which are necessary to defend our democracy, which means that we vote and we get out to vote and we get other people that we know to go out and vote, and we give them the information that is necessary to make a decision on how to vote. With respect to Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz, we do not know, many of us have not high expectations. But each of us can take an action which would include communicating with each of those senators and getting our neighbors, friends, and other people that we know who similarly want them to commit to listening to the evidence which is presented at the trial on the Articles of Impeachment, whatever they may be, and to vote in accordance with their oath of office, which requires them to forget their political well-being, but to look for the benefit of the country, this United States of America that we all live in. I agree that we're going to disagree, but that does not mean that we are wrong in asserting that this president is a danger to democracy. Now, one of the comments was that actually Donald Trump won by 7 million. Well, that's baloney. And you can do the research yourself. It's reported not just one location, multiple locations on the internet. If you wish to do the research about how the votes were counted, not only overall, but state by state, county by county, if you want to do it, that will give you the factual basis. Now, an internet device such as what you described, sir, is on its face impossible to do because of the way that our voting systems are set up in every state of the United States. That is, they're not connected to the internet. And so in order to go in and do the research you were talking about, you would have to go into what in Texas is called VAN. It's a part of the Secretary of State's website, and you would have to go down each and every line of every county and voting district and see how the votes were cast, and then you multiply that by 50 states of the Union. That is already has been done, but it does not show what you alleged, what you repeated has been shown. And the fact that one individual who represents that he did the sort of study that he described and testified to Congress, I mean, many of us listened to the Republican Congress go on for months on Benghazi and listened to all of the witnesses they brought in. I submit that they're all interesting, but I'm still going to rely on objectively based and sourced news. Having said that, I thank you all. I appreciate you inviting me, and I appreciate particularly Tom allowing me to say my piece, which is my rebuttal. And also, I'm going to pick up my stuff and be on my way. Not that I don't like being with you all, but I do have to go home. So thank you. If any of you all are anywhere near the Preston Royal Library, our Friends group is selling calendars. And all of what we get from the calendars are used to buy things for the library. It doesn't go somewhere else. It doesn't go for individuals. So if you want a calendar, we have some cute ones.
Well, that's it for tonight. They kick us out of here at 10:30, and you're welcome to talk to our speaker. But our formal meeting is done. See you all next week, hopefully. Thank you.